that day because of the weather, but by gosh, the weed store was open. Just a little late. Through any weather.
You can measure their ability to open based on profit margin, is that theory here?
More people are off work,
Right, yeah, yeah.
they'd have to go to work.
Yeah.
All right, it's 3 o'clock. Liliana,
Recording in progress.
this work session to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call for the record. Mayor Lindsay.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Howe.
Here.
Councillor Crane.
Here.
Councillor Weeks.
Here.
And Councillor Humbert.
Here.
We have a quorum. You may proceed.
Okay, at this time, I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so item A, discussion on booster pumps for water systems. Director Epler.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing this work session to happen to discuss this item. I did come up with a little handout that I'd like to share with y'all. I think this will be useful to y'all in understanding our water distribution center. And it should be relevant to our conversation as well. The item on the agenda that we want to discuss is the expenditure for the upgrade of our booster pump stations. We've had discussions about this, kind of planted the seed a while back, about our need to standardize and upgrade the capabilities of our booster stations. Okay, this work includes a combination of upsizing, some pipe sizing, some pump sizing obviously, and the installation of the VFDs to control these pumps. To give the best example of where this is going to give us the greatest benefit in our distribution center system, which is, our greatest need is our ability to refill tanks when something happens. Even though that's always a challenge in any of these zones, the area on the east side of 434, which is in the first 2 pages of the schematic that I just gave you, is our most challenging one because there are so many stages that we boost up the hill. So on page 1, you will see, I'll use this route for instance. We come out of the Angel Fire well number 9, which we call the new well, which is across from Olympic Park, across Highway 434. This is by far our largest producing well. Probably produces close to half of the water that's consumed within Angel Fire, and that's taking into account the snowmaking wells. It's pretty. It puts out more water than they use in snowmaking as one well. It's a great well. But if you follow the schematic up to where it goes to tank 3 and tank number 15, tank 3 and tank 15 are the tanks that you can see just to the right of the ski area, 15 being the large 1,000,000-gallon tank. And this has, this booster station at number 3 has 230 horsepower pumps. Okay, so it has the ability to get water up to the next stage of tank number 6 very quickly. But you can see at booster station 6, then we go to 2 15 horsepower pumps. And on page 2, I want to note that storage tank number 17 is actually storage tank number 7. Then that goes to 2 5 horsepower pumps. Then from 8 goes to 1 7.5 horsepower pump. And then from 9 to 10, there's 1 2 horsepower pump. As these pump sizes diminish, it means there's less elevation increase, okay? But what happens is if we have a situation, and this happened a few times over the last few months, where we have a water depletion in the area of tank 6 or tank 7, we can get tank 6 refilled pretty quick, but getting water to 6 and 7 is extremely slow. And in this slow process of filling tank number 7, tanks number 8, 9, 10, and ultimately 11 will empty. And if we have tank 6 and tank 7 empty in that scenario, it takes us about 2 weeks to stabilize that side of the water system to where each tank has what we would consider to be acceptable levels in it. Okay? I hate to be too dramatic over it, but I'll use the Labor Day weekend as an example. 2 days prior to Labor Day weekend, we had a water leak up there, and we had a pump failure also. And we went through the entire Labor Day weekend with less than a foot of water in every single one of these tanks. Okay. You know, we had very minimal outages, but what we have to be concerned about, especially as we're moving forward with our initiative to get properly sized lines, add fire hydrants, so forth and so on. We can't lose sight of the distribution system, and fire hydrants and big water lines don't mean anything if we don't have water in the tanks. Okay. Now, with this project, what we want to be able to increase our ability to do is put larger pumps in these booster stations, like number 6, 7, 8, and 9. 6, 7, and 8 being the most critical ones in this scenario. Is we can, if we put a 30 horsepower pump instead of a 15 horsepower pump at booster station 6, if we can get water into 6 quick and we need to get water to 7 quicker, we can turn up that pump and run it at a higher volume. The other thing that this upgrade does is it puts all of these booster stations, with the exception of booster station 9 on this map, are set up to have 2 pumps in each booster station. A year ago, we didn't have both pumps in a single booster station up here. Every single one of them just had 1 pump in place. I will say that in our water sanitary compliance inspection and report that we received in November, it was not a critical item, but it was mentioned as something that needed to be addressed, which means probably next inspection we will get hit on it, is if we have a booster station that's designed for 2 pumps and there's only 1 in place. Okay.
So, Kurt, real quick, is that for backup use or to be able to boost the?
Well,
volume?
the main purpose is to be able to alternate the pumps to extend their life. It is redundancy for if one goes bad, then you have one that you can keep the system going while the second one is repaired. As you recall, last summer we got in a couple of cases where booster pump went down and there was only one, and we didn't have a backup, and you know, and tank 4 was the scenario where we didn't have a backup. Fortunately, the guys were able to rebuild the pump and get it going. Needless to say, I had a few sleepless nights knowing I had a rebuilt pump and I only had 1 and I didn't have a backup. So ultimately, this is how we want to set up these booster stations. We've already made a big step towards making this achievable with the new control systems that we put in, where we can program these pumps where they alternate running. And the other thing that we can do with a larger pump and a VFD, as opposed to running a small pump multiple hours, we can run a larger pump for a short amount of time, let it rest, alternate it, run it for a short time, let it rest. Should really extend pump life. And but it was a finding and a recommendation in our compliance report that we essentially had booster stations that were designed to do something, but we weren't utilizing the full design. Essentially, they're designed to have 2 pumps in them, and we only had 1. The same scenario does exist over on the west side, but we only have 3 stages on the west side. The weak point on that side is the supply to tank number 2. Water only gets up to it so fast. And the next weakest point is pumping from 2 to 4 is slower than tank 4 can pump up to the Astons. So that side over there, there's more scenario of having to, you know, you have to shut pump 4 off for most of the day. You run the booster at 2 for 10, 12 hours, so you can run the booster at 4 for 3, so forth and so on. Anyway, what this, the biggest benefit that I think everybody should realize about this is it's gonna give us the ability to maintain levels in the tank when things go wrong, and we can recover more quickly. And it does give us the ability too, where if we, God forbid, we do get in a fire situation and we gotta get a lot of water up the hill. You know, in that scenario, there's many ways to look at it. You know, we know if a fire is heading our way, at some point they're gonna cut power. Which when they cut that power, we're not gonna be able to run these booster pumps. So it's, okay guys, we're probably gonna have to cut the power in 24 hours. Let's crank up these pumps. Let's get some water in these tanks, okay? If we're in a situation where water is being drawn from a pressure zone due to an event at an excessive amount, we'll have the ability to boost up the supply to the tank that's feeding the zone where the water is taken from, by fire trucks, water trucks, what have you. Anybody have any questions at this point?
Are you aiming to be able to standardize on how many different horsepower pumps with this then? Are you aiming for 1, 2, 3 different sizes of pumps, or were you?
We're looking at 3. If we take the back basin booster pump out of the equation. You see, I believe it is on the last page. See, it's a standalone system. What we're looking at is I was really hoping to have 2 sizes of pumps, but it's really not feasible.
Yeah.
As you can see, there are some that are significantly smaller.
Right.
But essentially, the ones that you see that are, let's say the 7.5 horsepower and less, will probably all be standard to a 7.5 horsepower. And the others, we will go to a 30 and a 40 horsepower. I'm sorry, a 50 and a 30.
Big picture, I know I've had this conversation with Tim Bertucci a few times, and I know you guys have as well, but this is really just the booster station upgrades.
Yes.
There is a scenario longer term where we'd like to potentially modify the distribution where we could gravity feed more versus booster feed, or is that feasible on both sides of 434?
The only way we could do that is get a well at the top of the mountain.
Okay.
Because our wells do come from the valley bottom. The two of the main wells, like I said, we call it the new well right across from Olympic Park. It was done 1988, I think. That's why it's called the new well. And then Coffee 2 well,
its name.
which is right next to the golf course. Those 2 wells actually supply the majority of our system. And then there's Peralta well, which is off of Villa Del Rey, just south of the cabin shares up that draw, and that's what pumps up to number 2. So those 3 wells, but to get in a gravity situation,
Not year-round, but just the ability, and it would take a larger tank and larger lines, but back to your fire point, to be able to, hey, we know a power outage is coming, and having storage up on the ridges where you can gravity feed back down for a time anyways.
yeah.
Um,
Well, this is just, I'll call it step 2 in improving our distribution center, our system. First step was the SCADA system, because incorporated with that was updated controls.
Right.
Electric controls that allow this to happen. But if you take note on page 2, let's see, I got mixed up here, guys. Okay, so on page 2, look at the tank sizes and the capacities. As we know, tank 7 was just upgraded to a 300,000 gallon tank. Then tank 8, which probably feeds more area than tank 7 at this point, area that there's quite a few new homes have been added, so forth and so on. It's a 175,000 gallon tank, and not in the best of shape. You know, it's a toss-up next tank to replace, should it be number 8 or number 2. Both have about equal issues. And then as you go up to tank 9, which does feed a fairly significant number of houses, it's only a 75,000 gallon tank. And it is probably, out of the whole scenario, is the hardest tank to get water to and maintain it when there's any kind of crisis. So, you know, going into our steps, what we have to do to upgrade this distribution system as far as water availability, you know, step 1 has been the SCADA, this booster station upgrades, definitely step 2. And even though it's a long-term thing, but we need to continue moving forward with upgrading tanks and upgrading our storage. Some of these tanks, and tank 7 is a great example. When it was built in 1983, it was definitely sufficient for what's up there. A lot of houses have been added to tank 7. And it's been a noticeable difference. It's actually been easier to keep that big tank full than it was the old one. The old one did have some leaks in it too.
Kurt,
Yes, sir.
so, I know you're, gonna be asking for the, to upgrade these pumps, and in that quote, does it include our goal of pump inventory? Or are we gonna have more money to spend on inventory? Because you know how we had the issue where we didn't have pumps in stock, and we said we're gonna work to solve that problem, so it doesn't happen again. Is this acquisition gonna allow us to achieve that goal, or are we still gonna have more work to do?
We currently actually have an excellent stock of backup pumps. In the last order that we placed for pumps, we actually, a good part of that order was the repair components to rebuild these pumps. We realized, as opposed to just buying a new pump, we can rebuild these things for a third of the price. The components are actually more readily available than a fully assembled pump. So not only did we improve our stock, the stock of backup pumps that we got accommodates the scenario of going to these 3 standardized sizes better. Basically saying we got an extra 50 horse and we got a couple extra 30 horse. So we're already set up on the backup part. We do have more backup pumps on order, but currently we have a backup pump for at least 1 backup pump for every scenario except the number 5 booster, which has a totally unique style of pump. It's actually, it uses submersible well pumps. But if you recall, just recently, we got the go-ahead for the pump upgrades on booster station number 5. And what that entails is taking out the old style pumps, redoing the piping, and getting a pump in there. I'm pretty sure they're gonna be 7.5 horsepower pumps.
Currently though, there's two 15 horsepower,
At 5?
booster station number 5.
Well, then yeah, I'm sorry for misspeaking there. Then that would probably be, those would be 30 horsepower pumps.
Each.
Yeah.
And you'll just keep the old pumps for backup as well, or they're pretty much expired?
Yeah, they're pretty much expired. We do, of the backup pumps that we have ordered, that when the scenario is in place, if we still have those backup pumps and they're obsolete to us, pump company will take them back or sell them for us.
And then by having 2 pumps at every station though, we don't have the dire circumstances of having backups on the shelf necessarily, because you basically got a backup on site.
Exactly.
And they'll all have lead lag control on all of them going forward? I assume the ones where you have a single pump now, there is no lead lag, and that's part of this bid, is to...
Yeah. Yeah, and everything will have VFDs. It's gonna be no more manual operation of pumps. It's all tied in with, I will say that even though, there were some challenges initially with the SCADA, and I think with anything, learning how to use it, and getting the parameters set right and set realistic and everything, we've maintained water levels in these tanks that we were not able to a year ago. It just seemed like time after time, a year ago this time, we either had a tank emptying or somebody forgot to turn the pump off and it was overflowing. And it's just, as the guys have gotten accustomed to SCADA and how to utilize it, it's really been a game changer as far as alerts and helping us understand what's going on when a scenario, when something does happen and things are going bad. But also having the ability to remotely turn pumps off and on when needed. And, override the parameters if we know we've got a leak and the tank's draining and, the pumps have been off because it shows it has enough water. Let's go ahead and turn them on because we know it's gonna need it. Multiple scenarios that I could give you. I was hoping the guys could be here today to visit with you, but they had a service call about 2:30, so. But yeah, I just, over the course of the last year and trying to really learn the nuts and bolts about this system, obviously I had to experience a few bad situations to understand what some of our weaknesses were, true weaknesses. And everything that I've presented to you guys from the first time we talked about SCADA to right now has been all based on what the guys in the field identified as their biggest challenges and what it would take to resolve them.
So we're getting down to the budgetary proposal. Andrew, where do we have, would this come out of the carryover cash and?
So that
How do you
is something we
propose
need to talk about.
paying for it?
Right now, we have about 1.6 million in carryover cash in the joint utility fund. So the options are either to pull it out of that cash or to pull it out of Go Bond. And there's different impacts to that, like we can't use Go Bond funds to buy water rights. So if we're looking to buy water rights, we can use utility funds to buy water rights. There are some decisions to be made there financially. I think, Kurt, correct me if I'm wrong, but your recommendation was Go Bond, is that correct?
We talked about that, but we also, and it'll be an item that's brought up in today's council meeting, we have a task order for design on Monte Verde Lake subdivision. Doesn't all have to come out of this fiscal year, but sorry if if I may be mistaken, but I thought that the money for this expenditure was in budget already under other contractual services currently.
So there's a difference between being in budget and where's the money, because we can put things in budget, but then where is the money gonna come from? So it's in budget, but we're gonna have to spend the money either out of cash reserves or take it out of our GO bond funds. Those are the two sources that are gonna pay for the budget that we have.
I see.
So,
But this was in our current budget. It was
the
expenditure.
expenditures were in our budget.
Yeah.
I mean, there's money in there for this in the budget. So there, it is a decision we have to make where we can. We do have GO bond funds, even prior year GO bond funds, that can be dedicated to purchasing this equipment as part of the water system. The other thing that Kurt mentioned is, we're trying to get ahead of our water system and development or redevelopment, I guess you should call it. With the Monteverde Lake area, we're trying to replace those, or some of the oldest and heaviest used. And also most of the small lines are in that area. So we're trying to start an initiative to do that, and we want to get grant money to pay for that. But to get grant money, we need to have it shovel ready, which means we need to have the engineering done. And we just have 2 portions of that, and I don't know, the whole area is like 6 different sections,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. But for 2 portions of that, the engineering's about $700,000. So it's about, we're trying to do this in $4 million segments for a couple of reasons. Number one, that's a palatable number for grants. And number two, we can only do so much in the summer because we basically have 7 months of construction. So when we look at those 2 things, we've kind of broken it down into like $4 million segments. And to do 2 of those is about $700,000. So it's just in your mind, round up, and it's going to be about $400,000 in engineering per segment to do that. And that's money we have to pay up front in order to get the grants to actually do the work.
So what would the timing on this phase 2 project here be then? I see you have a quote with some dates on it, but what do you?
The goal would be they said they could have it done by August.
The one other thing, Kurt, if you could talk a little bit about where it fits into your phases to have, because you said if they cut the power, if we have a fire, they're gonna cut power. It's gonna happen, especially if it's caused by wind. So then, when they cut power, we have the tanks full, and we can use gravity to use that water until it's gone, and then we're done with water. So one of the steps of this that Kurt and I have talked about is we really need generators at each of these pump sites. And that's not gonna be cheap either.
Like
So we need to, I'm sorry?
Like propane?
Probably propane. There are some new solar options that are out there. I don't know how good they are. It's probably gonna have to be propane. So, that's the reason I wanted to have this session, because on the surface, it sounds like, yeah, this makes sense, go do it. Why wasn't this done before? But there's other impacts that are gonna affect what we do going forward when we do this. And the council needs to be aware of it, and the council needs to be the one, I think, to make this decision. And I think y'all need to understand the side effects of the decision that's gonna be made. And I'll tell you, I'm in favor of this. I think we need to do this, but I don't want you guys to just say, oh, well, Kurt and Brett want it, so let's do it. You need to understand what the impact is and the financial impact.
No, I appreciate that, but I do I do trust Director Epler in his assessment of, number one was SCADA systems, if this is number two, and this is number two. And we know that there's a lot that we need to address, and like you said, there's a lot of give and take. I mean, the generators would be, part of that conversation as well, amongst other things. The engineering, like you said, we're gonna spend a bunch of money on engineering that we could be putting into hard assets right now, generators and so forth, but I think that's short-sighted. So, again, if Director Epler's given this his ranking, I take, that weighs a lot on my decision to move forward.
I will add that, with the timing of this and, I have to admit, them saying they could have it done by August, I'm hoping by winter, okay? If anything would affect it, it'd be supply chain issues, particularly on VFDs. But, and I could have proposed this in phases. And it is, we still, in a sense, will be doing it in phases as it's going to roll into the next fiscal year before they're completed. But I have to say, with our different, different things that come up, I think we all have to admit that there were different things on our mind a year ago than there are right now. We have different concern about water rights than we did a year ago. We have a different concern about undersized water lines than we did a year ago. And I'm glad we're moving forward with resolving those issues. But again, I'll say all of it is for naught if we don't have a distribution system that can supply the water when it's needed. So in a sense, I guess what I'm getting at is this will be essentially phased a little bit in regards to overlapping into the next fiscal year. But I don't want to end up with a project where we do phase one, priorities change, and we never get to phase two. As we've got a lot of that currently in the system. Great ideas that started out good, got a little momentum, and then went nowhere from there.
I guess if they do replace the electrical boxes that they wire these larger systems into, would it be beneficial to wire them to where, with the intentions of having generators, a switch box in there for backup generator?
Absolutely. I think, ultimately, to give Kurt his ultimate wish list, I'd love a backup generator at every component, every booster station, every well. These aren't generators, it's not a Generac that you're gonna put on a home. If you wanna see a good example of what the generator might look like, if you're going by the headworks on the way to the transfer station, that backup generator that's there by the sewer grinder station. They're big, robust, 480 volt, big demand. But I absolutely wanna start out with the scenario of, initially I would look at having generators at the wells, and then having 2 mobile generators that could be transported up the hill and plugged in and used as needed, to at least be prepared for that emergency situation. The ultimate goal of having a backup generator at every single location, that's a ways down the line. But I think we absolutely need to look at what our minimum is to get started. And, maybe maybe it's not necessarily 3 permanent generators at all 3 of the main wells. Maybe 1 portable generator can bounce from well to well, depending on needs, so forth and so on. But it'd be good to start out with at least 2. And that's something we'll be putting together for you soon.
And then, Kurt, just to be clear on this, I know that virtually all of our well houses and our pump houses need to be rebuilt too. I mean, they're all old. And
Yeah.
Where does that fit in?
Well, we wanted to start on that. We did an RFP to rebuild 2 pump houses, and 2 people had showed up for the pre-bid meeting. It doesn't look like they're going to submit a bid. So I would just found out about that today, because the statement of acknowledgement was due by today, and we didn't get either one. So we'll have to see. I still wanna move forward with improving those. There are a couple of the facilities that are in good shape. Booster station number 4 is acceptable. It has some issues, it could be remodeled. Obviously, the facility at Coffee 2 Well, the nice big cinder block building there is in great shape, and the facility at New Well is in pretty good shape. A couple of these booster stations, we have to cut a hole in the roof to change the pumps out. As I explained before, many of these booster stations, the ones put in the 1983-84 era, originally had horizontal pumps where the motor laid horizontal and the pump turned into the pipe like this. We now use a vertical stand pump. And, booster station 3, which was one of the ones that we want to rebuild, even though it's in fair shape, it has 6.5 foot tall ceilings on it. There's like this much space from the top of the pump to the ceiling. So fortunately, we have some very strong, determined young men that can wrestle those 500+ pound pumps into place. But we need to have, we can't lose sight of that. That's I would say that's part of step 2. The hope was to be able to upgrade these booster stations and rebuild the facilities on them at the same time. It's just our first try. We haven't got anybody interested in building those buildings.
And one other thing, Kurt, I'd like you to talk about is you mentioned it earlier, which is the potential or the need to eliminate the pumping requirements. We'd have to put wells up mountain or at the top of the mountain or somewhere. Talk a little bit more about the practicality of that and the cost of that and the timing of that.
Well, we know a new well is going to cost $500,000 to $1 million. Y'all are very familiar with our valley and our terrain. Let's take an example of Valley of the Utes. Okay, you got a big flat meadow, big canyon. Maybe that's an area, I'm no geophysicist, maybe that's an area where a well could be dropped that would produce the flows that would supply a tank at the flows, that would be beneficial. If we just go up on top of the mountain, the resort drilled a well just off of Summit and got less than 10 gallons a minute out of it, and it was 1,500 feet deep. As a municipal well, that'd be a $2.5 million well. Okay. I'm not to say that it can't be done, but maybe if a geophysicist could tell us there's a possible scenario where we could find water on the top of the mountain that could be put directly into a tank and backfed down. But to put it into perspective, the new well that we have in the back basin, which is maintaining the level decently in the back basin tank, it's a 20 gallon a minute well. It feeds a lot of condos down here, but it's a pretty small number of houses on the back basin. The new well, as we call it, across from Olympic Park, that produces about 750 gallons a minute. And we run it a lot. And it's needed. That pump needs to put out that much water. So it's one thing getting a well that will produce a little bit of water to create that gravity scenario, but if it needs to be a significant well. And it's dropping a well is a gamble. Very expensive one.
So the reason I asked that, Kurt's already given me that answer, but I wanted to reiterate the fact that the pump station scenario we have, it's very unlikely we're going to get away from it. So the only way to get away from it is wells, and the wells are more costly, and the likelihood that a well could generate the volume of water we need is is low. And so there's not a lot of other options. We just have to, because I didn't like, when I first looked at this, I didn't like the number of tanks that we have to go through, especially on this side over here. And, you know, I think there's gotta be a way to cut that down and, you know, but from a practical standpoint, there's not really.
Let me ask you something too, Kurt, on the, so since the new well was drilled in 1988, and we just replaced a well, what's the current status of all the wells? In your opinion, the life left, are there, do you foresee us having to drill any replacement wells in the near future?
Well, I will say if there's any further growth off of the back basin tank, that we'll need to add another water source, okay? In reviewing the well logs, you know, I think y'all all know that there are the snowmaking wells they use back there. One which we were able to utilize as our new well was being drilled. They had an issue with it, it went dry on them, but anyway, they'll get that resolved. But come to find out, there's another well back there that's not being used. When the Mountain House was initially built, there was not even a water supply system to the back basin. So, in fact, there wasn't even any snowmaking back there yet. So there is a well next to the Mountain House back there, it shows up on the logs. I wanna find out what it's going to cost to scope it, see what it has. Hopefully it has enough surface casing and everything where it's viable to be able to add in to the back basin well. As far as the three main wells that are our main suppliers down here, feel very confident about them. They're producing very well. We never know what's gonna happen through times of drought. But they're staying consistent and producing well, you know, water very well. But pumps have a life, and we work the pumps hard in those wells. And, but it really hasn't been too long since a new pump was put in Coffee 2 well, and it hasn't been very long since a new pump was put in New Well. And actually a better pump was put in New Well when they replaced it, the one that Tim helped them get. Peralta Well's been going strong for a while. But as far as, you know, preparing for more growth, any growth, obvious, I'm stating the obvious, is gonna produce more demand. So yeah, I guess the short answer is yes, there's always the potential that we would wanna add another well. There are existing wells that have been taken offline, one of which is an artesian well that we have to go ahead and get plugged. It's right next to the bank off of North Angel Fire Road, that building there. That's Peralta 1, or Coffee 1 well. But also going up Vale Avenue, just past where Squaw Valley turns off, there's a shack right there. There's a well right there. Can that be utilized and integrated into the system? I don't know. There are some existing wells that still belong to the village but have been inactive for a while, and it would just take some research of if those can be put back into play to add more water into the system or not. You see, prior to the new well being done, Coffee 1 well supplied all the water in the core area of the village directly from the well. And then the Coffee 2 well is what filled the tanks. So when the new well was put in place and the Coffee 1 was no longer needed, because it couldn't supply the demand and the pressure requirements, and it was pumping directly into the lines. So that's why it was abandoned.
But it has to be anyway, because it's artesian, right?
Yeah. If it was being utilized and didn't show an artesian flow, maybe, but it was abandoned just enough for them to show it was artesian. The new well, when it was drilled, it was an artesian well, but they, you know, did the proper development work where it could be sealed off and utilized, but almost washed that rig off the hill. There's a lot of big artesian flow. And even currently, as much as we use it, when the pump's turned off, in an hour, the static level on the water is about 15 feet from the top of the casing. It's a heck of a well. And I know it's a large expenditure, it really is, but I think Evan from the water department put it best when I told him, I said, you know, this upgrade you want, $700K. This is a big deal. And he said, think about it over the next 7 years, it's $100,000 a year. And even went as far as to say, we only do pieces of it, we've gotta do something. So,
Could you give the pros and cons of using go-bond money as opposed to using funds?
Well, so both of the money has to be spent on water wastewater. They can't, neither one of the monies can be spent on anything but water wastewater. The primary difference between the GO bond is it has to be spent on infrastructure. The cash reserves we have can be spent on anything. It can be spent on vehicles. It could be spent on payroll. It could be spent on water rights. Anything, any aspect of the Joint Utilities Department, the cash reserve can be spent on. GO bond has to be spent on infrastructure. And so, you know, Kurt has plans for the GO bond money on what we're trying to do, and we want to utilize it for improving our water system and our sewer system, which is what it's intended to do. But I guess to me, the big one right now, and the only reason I'm leaning a little more towards GO bond is water rights. Because water rights are, I mean, none of this is gonna matter when we exceed our water rights. Well, that's an exaggeration, but without water rights, we can have the best system in the world, and it's not gonna matter, we're not gonna be given the water from the state.
But at the same time, I think we've got a small cushion that we didn't have before, because by getting towards the best system in the world, we're not using, we just the leaks that they fixed, was it 300 acre feet of water
300 acres.
that was saved from the year before? So
It's probably more than that, to be honest. I mean, I really looked at this after we, I think I don't know if I should say this on camera, but I think the benchmark leak was a big chunk
well,
of
that's what we
that.
said. We had those discussions and agreed, but it's not as dire as it was a year ago, but it's still something that has to be dealt with.
It's
But by continuing to make upgrades on our systems and repair it and everything else, you can see the benefits already.
That's huge.
Yeah.
It's almost a wash though, because unfortunately, even though we saved all that last year over the prior
We
year,
were going over
the
reserves.
this year, we're in a drought, so they're actually reducing our capacity this year based on our water rights, because, you know, in drought, they have the ability to do that. Just like in wet years, they can actually allocate more water. So we need we don't have a buffer right now on water rights, and we need a buffer.
So I was talking to my residential insurance agent last week, and as Kurt used the term a while ago, stating the obvious, without the technical terms, Angel Fire is a red flag to every insurance company.
Colfax County.
Yes, so anything we can do, because we don't know how long this drought's gonna last. And if it does get worse and worse, it's gonna get harder and harder to get insurance. So to me, things like this are things we should be doing. And I'm fully supportive of it.
Would this translate to our ISO in any way? This upgrade to the water system?
Well,
I'll say yes, there absolutely is a factor, because of course they come out and inspect fire hydrants, frequency of hydrants and so forth and so on. But another factor of that is the ability for that fire hydrant to be supplied with water. Okay, as we all witnessed when the fires hit LA, it was all over the news. Firefighters plugging into hydrants, very little water coming out. It was a supply and distribution issue. More was being used than could be supplied. I mean, that was an extreme situation.
Well, it would pale in comparison to our system currently.
Yeah,
I mean, we'd be in a worse situation.
yeah.
So I think the council needs to think there is the ISO side. I don't think, other than the measurement of flow out of fire hydrants and the distance between fire hydrants, I don't think there's a category in ISO that says, do you have big enough tanks? Because they only test it for like so many minutes. It's like 5 minutes or something. But forget ISO. The real question is, if we had a big fire, could we fight it? And to be frank, right now, it's not as positive as we'd like it, let me put it that way. The answer to that question is, it would be questionable. Again, if our tanks are all full, we could fight it for a while, depends on how big the fire is. They're gonna go quick when you're fighting a fire and we're pulling that amount of water out of a fire hydrant. Those tanks are gonna drain quick, especially the smaller ones. So, to me, even though ISO is important because it helps us get insurance and stuff, an equal and bigger concern is, can we save a house?
Right.
If there is a fire.
I'd rather save my house than get paid for it.
I agree.
What is the argument then for, to Bill's question about doing this out of cash versus go bonds? Because we go back to that question, and it seems like the go bond is the obvious answer, but I haven't heard the downside of doing go bond versus.
The downside of using the go bonds is that's less money we're gonna have for the infrastructure that we wanna put in.
Well, but but that infrastructure is all water lines. If we go put in a bunch of new water lines with infrastructure and you don't have the pumps to push water through the new lines,
So really, most of the go bond money will be used on engineering and that type of thing, because the go bond money's it's $900,000 every other year. It's gonna pay for engineering for the most part, at least that portion of it. Is that a fair statement, Kurt?
Yeah, but I think to elaborate, I think to ask one person what the pros and cons of doing go bond you're gonna get different answers from everybody, okay? And as I took this job last year and started to get educated about go bond, but also having the personal perspective of what I expected to see from go bond when it was first started in 2017. I'm one of the guys of the opinion I want go bond to go to something that's gonna show tangible results. So when I first received all of the books that are about this thick for each year of go bond that have all of the receipts, I'm thumbing through and it's plan and design, plan and design, plan and design. And initially I was a little frustrated. I'm like, man, that's not fixing our roads or doing our pipes. But now I understand it's a very important component to be able to get that grant money, okay? I look at go bond differently with streets than I do with water. I see that go bond in streets is something to put into a good tangible result, repaving a road, so forth and so on. The cost for plan and design, the need that we have for plan and design is not as great because Julie's got so much of it done right now already. Where with water, in upsizing these water lines and needing the shovel-ready projects to get the grant money, go bond is more logical in plan and design. But in something like this, it's still logical to me because it's a great tangible result that we can show people. I think there needs to be a balance because plain and simple, I want to move forward with plan and design to get shovel projects ready, and I want to continue to progress in improving this distribution system.
Well, and we learned at the legislative session, because our top priority, our capital improvement plan was our water infrastructure. And that's what we started the session lobbying for. And we quickly learned that without having the engineering completed and having it in front of the New Mexico Water Authority, and basically their blessing, we had no shot at getting those funds this year. So once we realized that, which didn't take long, we pivoted and went after funds for the new fire station. But that engineering is a must. It has to be done this summer for a complete application in August with the Water Authority.
Now, if you bear with me, something that I learned through this process and understanding more what we need to achieve to get that grant in August, initiating this plan and design, but other things that I've been taught. One, I was told by the engineer that I know it probably works in the roundhouse, as it is an emotional subject right now, fire protection, for everybody. Was told by the engineer that in applying for these grants, that if we apply for them under the narrative that we need better fire protection, it's actually a hit against us, okay? Because for two reasons. He said, one, many of the people in the Drinking Water Bureau, they view fire protection as thinning projects, logging operations, so forth and so on. But the other thing that Tappan brought up is that if we go in to get this grant money with the narrative that we want to improve our firefighting capabilities, then we're opening ourselves up to the questions, what's the state of your distribution system? What's your storage like? Okay? And the way I see it is when that time comes, if we're able to tell them, okay, over the last 2 years, we've installed SCADA systems, we've upgraded a tank, tripled the size of one tank, we're working on 2 others. We've increased the capabilities of our booster stations. I think that if we go in with the narrative that we're putting in more fire hydrants, upsizing lines for fire protection, if we're prepared to be able to show them that we've made steps to improve the distribution system, I think it's going to be very beneficial. Plain and simple, Mayor and Council, I want to do it all. Okay, I want to get it all fixed.
Oh, and it may be cheaper to do it all in the first round than.
I'm talking, I want to do the pumps, I want to fix the undersized lines, I want to
Oh,
get
yeah.
fire hydrants.
Serving
Absolutely.
better, payment.
It's only $120 million. If you guys are looking for tax deductions.
One thing to want to put into perspective is what we'll be talking about tonight with the plan and design for Monument Verde Lake subdivision. We have it divided into 2 phases. Even if we move forward with design on one of those phases, it's going to be a stretch to have full plan and design by August. It's going to be a very time consuming process. Everybody should understand in upsizing these lines, all existing utilities will be located, surveyed, everything. And drainage issues will be addressed, because we go in and put water lines, are gonna fix the roads too. And it's gonna be a very time-consuming, all lot corners identified, and that's before you even get into construction, staking, and everything else. And there again, the reason why in the phases that we broke it into to elaborate more, if we get the funding, we have to complete the project in 2 calendar years. And we get 12 to 13 months of workable season within that 2 years. And the other challenge is when the project gets too big, you don't get very, the availability of contractors to do this work. It's the biggest challenge in rural areas right now, is getting people to actually bid on the work.
And bonding capacity.
And the bonding capacity. Any further questions?
I say you do it all.
Before you retire.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Sorry, it was more than 5 minutes. Wait till this evening.
But the good news is it was less than an hour.
Planning session is
Recording stopped.
1 minute less.
it was a good use of time.